Okay. Brunswick-Glynn County Joint Water Sewer Commission for Thursday, August 16, 2018 will come to order. If you'll join me, Commissioner Turnipseed will lead the invocation, and I'll lead the pledge. Please rise.
Our dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day. And Father, we thank you that we live in a free country and that we're able to work and just help the citizens of Glynn County and Brunswick to meet their water and sewer needs. Father, help us to do everything that brings glory to you and help us to be a shining light in this community and for everyone we come in contact with. Bless this time and this meeting and help us to make right decisions that will benefit all of us citizens and customers. And we ask this in your name, in your Son's name. It's in his name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, public comment? Thank you, Krista. We have two members that are absent.
Mr. Chairman, in regards to that, right before the meeting, I got a text from Mr. Adams that said he's got personal matters, he won't be able to be here today.
Okay. All right, then I need a motion from one of the commissioners to excuse Commissioner Browning and Commissioner Adams. I got a text message or an email from Commissioner Browning telling me that he will be unavailable also.
I'll make a motion to excuse those two individuals, sir.
Second.
Second. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Okay, motion's approved. Okay, we'll get straight to the approval items. Is there any, Mr. Executive Director, are there any changes to the agenda?
There was one, Mr. Chairman, the item 4, the recommendation memo that I included in the document included a recommendation for a decision on the engineering selection. At this point, we've had further feedback. We've looked at our situation and I'll get into the directives to go back and do further negotiations with other other proposers. So it won't be a decision.
Okay, does that mean we need to move it to a discussion, or we still discuss it?
I don't know if that's necessary, but I don't have a recommendation that requires approval at this point.
So you just want to drop it from the agenda?
That's fine. To explain what we're talking about, maybe real briefly, we're in talking to our attorney and to the other commissioners here, we thought it'd be best to go forward and do a negotiation with the top 3. We've been in talks with the number 1 proposer, but we're going to look at the others as well and see what we can get from them on this situation before we come with a final recommendation.
Okay, commissioners, do you want to discuss it or leave it as an item for decision?
I'm fine with what he said.
Okay,
Who's me?
okay,
Fine.
okay. If I can have a motion to delete item 4, LS 4003, upgrades engineering and selection process.
You want
Is that, are we postponing?
Yes, we're going to postpone it.
to the next meeting?
Say again?
To the next meeting?
Correct.
Okay.
So moved. Second.
Okay, all those in favor, please raise your right hand. Okay. Is that empty half the book? Sorry. Commissioners, if you would review the minutes, and when you're ready, provide a motion to approve the minutes from the 2nd of August regular meeting, and then we'll move and have a resolution or a motion for the executive session.
A motion to approve the minutes dated August 2nd.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Okay, the regular minutes are approved, and the executive session, I don't believe you had an opportunity to look at these.
Nope.
Okay.
I make a motion, we accept the minutes.
Okay, for the executive session on 2 August, a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Okay, minutes are approved.
I got a question, just
Sure.
clarification. We're discussing our executive session minutes. If anyone else have an issue with them,
Then we would go back into executive
Okay,
session.
that's all I
and-
wanted
and
to know.
discuss it.
Okay.
Because,
that's all I want to know. That's all I want to know. Okay, we're good.
okay. So we're now to item 3, which is amendments to rate resolution for fiscal year ending June 30, 2019. So under tab 3. John? you
Commissioners?
have-
Back in late 2015, early 2016, and the rates that were determined then for the 2016-17 year, the rates for the 2017-18 year, and for the current year. And what we've found during that analysis of all of those costs is that the cost of the meters that was included in the original rate resolution was based on worst-case scenario of putting in the meter. So we went back and made a more honest estimation of the average time that it takes to put in that meter. Most of the cost was in labor and machine time for that. So once we recomputed all of those, the 1-inch and the 1.5-inch residential meters actually had a decrease in cost. The 2-inch meters wound up being just slightly more than in the rate resolution. So staff recommends that we amend the rate resolution to the prices that are shown here as the recomputed amounts for those meters. There's a copy of the Appendix A with the meter costs highlighted, and there's also a copy of Appendix B where there's a clarification of the sewer lateral inspections, that's for either new service or inspecting demolitions.
Why does it cost more to install a 2-inch irrigation meter than a 2-inch residential meter?
That's what I was thinking last, same with the 1-inch.
It's largely the backflows.
Okay. But the 2-inch went up 145 and the 2-inch residential only went up 30, so. And the 1-inch residential, irrigation residential went down 595.
Yes, sir. And again, that's mostly, that's all entirely due to labor costs and to the machine time, because we charge out a per hour charge for the excavator and the trailer that carries the excavator, an air compressor, and I think a couple other pieces of equipment.
So the irrigation has a backflow and the residential does not?
No.
How many residential users do we have that have 2-inch meters?
Very few.
And how many have 2-inch irrigation meters?
I don't believe any.
Okay.
Who are we refunding this money to, this refund,
Well,
cost
the-
reduction? Who,
Oh,
Refund back
I'm
to
glad
who?
you asked that, Commissioner. We went back through the records for July and August of this year. We've sold a total of 21 meters during that time, all of them 1-inch meters. Most of those were paid for in the early weeks, the first couple of weeks of July, where we had already given a price quote and all of
Okay.
that to the customer.
It's
So
customers,
we
okay.
really only have 4 meters that would be refunded for a total of $1,800.
Okay. But it goes back to the customer? who
Yes, sir.
Purchased it, okay, okay.
I'm confused on the backflow. The irrigation is more expensive than the residential.
It has a backflow,
It's-
the residential does
yeah.
not.
So well, residential has a backflow, but we don't pay for the backflow?
Specifically, the residential has a dual check, very inexpensive, $40 to $50 device, and the irrigation is required to have a reduced pressure principle, the RPZ, the highest hazard protection. So it's a considerable difference in price between mounting the dual check inside the meter box on a residential meter versus having to have a service loop outside, above ground for the RPZ, because it actually dumps if there's back pressure or back signage.
And I actually did email to all of you the computational sheets for each of those meters, so you can go back and see what the difference, of course, the materials have increased in price, but you can go back and see the amounts of labor that are charged and so on for all of those.
The 2-inch residential meters, are they as accurate as a 1-inch residential meter for residents?
I mean, anytime you increase meter size, it's gonna get slightly less accurate.
So why do we even allow 2-inch residential
Well,
meters?
that's not just for residential, that's for any 2-inch meter.
Yeah, that's for any, I called it residential to differentiate it from an irrigation meter that requires the
The
higher.
service meter in general, not just 2-inch. Most of our 2-inch meters are commercial properties.
Well, wouldn't they have a backflow? Or is it just a dual check you're talking about?
Dual check inside the meter box.
Even if it's at a commercial location?
Correct, it depends on the hazard at that point, so if it's a low hazard like an accounting firm,
got you.
Lawyer's office, we're not gonna require a testable device, it'll be a dual check, kind you can get at Home Depot.
So what if I'm irrigating with my regular residential meter? Is there not a hazard there? I mean, why does irrigation require a high hazard if you just,
Irrigation requires, because you got a better chance of stagnant water on an irrigation meter.
okay, I got you.
If you're using it from your regular house, there's gonna be other flow
I
of
see.
water through there.
Makes sense.
Okay, do I have a motion?
I move that the JWSC amend the rate resolution Appendix A to reflect the recomputed cost of meters and refund the cost reductions for any meters purchased on or after July 1, 2018. And that Appendix B be amended to clarify the fee for sewer lateral inspections.
Second.
Second. Further discussion?
Yes, sir, one question. For this rate resolution, that means that this have to be approved through,
No.
no, this is.
This is just a change to a fee. The only thing that has to actually be approved is the actual rate, variable rates in rate resolution.
Okay,
that
well,
we charge
this
for
is
water.
just for,
It's-
okay,
This is a
just,
fee, so that's where that goes.
okay,
And that doesn't require that.
all right, okay, no problem.
I think
That's
that,
what my attorney has told me.
It doesn't require notice and public hearings and things like that.
Okay.
It does require an official vote. Yes, sir.
It's not official vote with us, but don't require to be notified the county and the city at all.
Yes, sir.
Okay, that's what I was going, yes, sir, okay, thanks.
I think that annually we ought to review these costs, though, the installation costs, to see and modify this each year.
Yes, sir.
Nice, good
We
idea.
actually have a model for all of the fees that are included on Schedule A and some of those on B that, given all of the other things that were going on with the rate structure and the recomputing this year, we didn't perform. Next year, that will be part of the rate computations and included in the rate resolution.
Further discussion? All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Motion's carried.
Thank you.
We're now to number 5 on your agenda, tab 5, lift station 2056.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. As you recall, we have evaluated the Frederica unsolicited proposal previously. Back before you today to discuss the Frederica Comprehensive Agreement related to that unsolicited proposal. You should have in your packet a copy of the comprehensive agreement that is relatively fresh, hot off the press, and a memo outlining some highlights of the agreement. Ultimately, what the parties have come to an agreement on for approval by the JWSC is that the developer proposes to fund the necessary improvements to the sewer infrastructure in order to provide the capacity for the development in excess of the capacity created by the Sinclair agreement, if any. An important part of this agreement is also the conveyance of the ownership of lift station 2056, which is currently titled in the name of the developer. The developer acknowledges and agrees pursuant to this agreement that it will convey the property on which lift station 2056 is located to the utility upon the utility's request, which I assume will be shortly after entering into this agreement. The amounts paid by the developer in accordance with this agreement will be credited by the utility towards capital improvement fees that would otherwise become due from the developer upon construction plan approval and the contemporaneous opening of the accounts during the development of the property. In exchange for the payment, there will be a reservation of capacity. Upon payment of the capital improvement fees, the utility will agree to reserve and guarantee sewer capacity and system access for the development. Prior to allowing access to the system, developer shall obtain all approvals necessary from Glynn County Development Department, and further, developer shall pay the associated fees outlined in the then current utility rate resolution. Reservation of capacity shall be perpetual upon payment of the capital improvement fees. The term of the agreement is 10 years from the date of execution unless the developer has paid its capital improvement fees, which at that time the reservation capacity will be perpetual.
Okay.
This allows the utility to construct the project itself instead of having the developer actually do the construction and then dedicate the infrastructure to the utility. This will allow the utility to do the project on its own timeline, but provide the funds to complete the project.
Okay. Normally, when we reserve funds, we start sending a bill.
When we open an account, we start sending a bill, yes, sir.
Will they start getting a bill on this?
Once they pay their capital improvement fees, yes, sir.
Okay, so,
And right now, they have not entered into the preliminary plat stage. They have to have an executed agreement with the
so this is just an
JWSC.
agreement, this is what we're gonna do,
Right.
but they're not gonna execute anything.
It's my understanding that with this agreement, they will then begin the preliminary plat process, and then they'll go through that process, and at the time that they submit their construction plans and have those construction plans approved, then they'll pay their capital improvement fees, and at that time, the reservation capacity will be binding and perpetual.
Okay. So this is just so that they have something to show that the county, that we're talking,
That we are.
that
okay
I'll
with
have the
what you're saying.
capacity when I need it.
Yes, sir.
This is our agreement.
Yes, sir.
I understand.
There seems to be several of these recently. Do we not have a standard template for all these that we can just, instead of you writing one and paying you to write one every time?
I wish.
No offense.
This is the template, actually.
Okay. It just seems like there's
but
always a
it's-
little bit different from one. to
Well,
one.
all of them have been different. Some of them have just been prepayment of taps. Some of them have been payment with a repayment provision. The Sinclair was a multifaceted dual option agreement, and this one has been through multiple revisions, and I think we settled on the easiest way to do it.
Got a question with our lift station. Now, right, currently our lift station, it does not, where it sits at, doesn't belong to us?
That is correct.
Is it the lift station or the property?
The property doesn't belong to us, so I'm trying to figure out how do we get a lift station on somebody's property?
Oh, this is Glynn County. I'm sorry.
There are a number of lift stations. It just happens. It was intended to be dedicated to the JWSC upon the development plans approvals,
Right.
but the dedication never went through.
Okay. So as part of this process, they plan to convey the land to us, the property to us as well?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And we've maintained that lift station, and we've made improvements to that lift station since then.
Yes, sir.
So all
We've been
that-
acting like it was ours.
Can we go ahead and get that deeded to us if this is not executed?
Part of their process, I think they're trying to
Yeah.
use this as a leverage.
It'll
Give us the
be,
property.
well, the lift station is up standard, so if they wanted to go through the dedication process without signing this agreement, that would be fine, is my understanding.
I thought they was using it as a little leverage to move forward what they want to do.
No, sir, not really. I don't think so.
I think it's pretty much just cleaning up
Okay. All right.
Yes, sir.
things that should have been done. Okay, any other discussion, gentlemen? All right, if there are no other discussion, do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to accept it.
On the second page.
I second them. Let me read that motion.
Oh. Yeah, I'll read it. I hereby move that the JWSC approve the comprehensive agreement in the form attached hereto, guaranteeing capacity and access for those lots whose construction plans have been approved and upon payment of the capital improvement fees associated with those lots.
Second.
Sorry, there was a minor revision to what was included in your package. So in this form attached.
So is it change the motion or just?
I think the motion is fine, just with that agreement right there. The chairman can execute that copy right there.
What is the difference?
There was just a simple statement that the JWSC would accept the capital improvement fees when they were paid. Which I could explain the importance of that, but it's, just trust me on this one.
Okay,
No material change.
so we have a motion, did you second it?
I did.
Okay. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Motion is carried. Okay, next is item 6, Atlantic Gas and Light Easement Encroachment Agreement.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. It's Mr. Dormey's memo here, but I'm happy to cover this. Charlie, forgive me if I butcher it, but I can give you the background pretty quickly. There's an attachment on the back. Gives you a site location map. This is on Meadows Drive, 134 Meadows is where the location is, on St. Simon's Island, kind of close to the Military Road, et cetera, southeastern St. Simon's. We were approached by Atlanta Gas Light to encroach upon one of our easements that we already have, a Joint Water and Sewer Commission easement. We have water and sewer, runs through that 30-foot wide easement shown on the exhibit. They have several customers on Meadows Drive that they would hope to reach by extending their 2-inch gas main to Meadows. And they have approached us to have access or an agreement to give them access to our easement to run the gas line through there. That's a quick summary there. I can read the memo if you like and the dirty details. Couple things that I'll just mention. why are we doing this? Well, we can certainly say no, or the board can certainly say no. As a binding agreement, that's why we're bringing it to the board for this type of thing, and it deals with property. Whenever a fellow utility approaches us, we try to accommodate. If they're trying to reach customers or whatnot, we try to work together in the community as best we can. That's one reason, the primary reason, but also oftentimes we come across other utilities easements that we may need to work with them on to get our utilities extended to customers. So that is the premise behind why we bring this before the board for consideration.
So are they gonna bore this, line, or are they gonna do, dig it?
Good question, Commissioner Harvey. That's, my understanding is they intend to open dig this so that we'll be able to see exactly where it goes.
Okay.
And we would, of course, be present while it's being installed so we can assure and we would mark it accordingly.
Okay.
On the easement, it's a 30-foot easement. It's just between Meadows and Military is where we're talking about, right?
Correct, yes, sir.
And they're gonna put it on the outer 5 feet of the, which side?
Correct. The current intent, draft intent is to the east, the eastern side of the easement, closest to that house. There's a house on 134. That's actually one of the customers they're hoping to serve. And there's several more on the north side of Meadows. So they, the draft intent is to run it along the eastern easement boundary.
So will they serve the customer directly out of the easement?
My understanding is they're gonna serve them off Meadows, serve them off Meadows. There's the, well, hold on a second, I'll take that back, 134.
At 134?
Yes, sir, I'm sorry, apologize. If you look at, this is actually AGL sketch they sent to us. Looks like they're indicating they're gonna serve Meadows directly, well, no, I'm sorry, it's out of the easement, yes. The easement's in bold red right there, it's north of the easement.
Was the sewer put in before the water line was?
I would assume so, because it's deeper. The water line came across the top of it. As far as dates, I'll have to verify that, date of construction on there. That water line being a 6-inch, that could be the original water line. If I had to guess, it came later. Sewer was likely first. But we can verify that. What's that? Yeah. Good point, good point. 28-inch, kind of a different size. Likely it's very old.
What's that?
28-inch diameter sewer,
28-inch diameter?
is that what it is?
It ain't 28 inch, they don't make
Yes,
that.
sir.
That's what it says.
28-inch.
So it's probably really old sewer if it's 28.
I believe it's at a clay size. I'm trying to think of what that is, but it's a,
I'll make, there's no 28-inch pipe.
yeah, it's an old, I don't know. That's what they're calling on GIS, but we'll have to definitely confirm that.
It sounds like a win-win. Are there any cons to this at all? I mean, what is,
Good point. You know, first reaction is why do we want to let somebody else in our easement because it could impact operations? You know, obviously that's a concern. We did create a review for this in our review process, brought it before operations in our review team meetings. Applied the, you know, heard from all parties involved, and water and sewer were fine with this proposal. So looks like it's going to minimally impact our maintenance of our system, and the pros in staff's recommendation outweigh the cons.
Do you know how deep our sewer line is?
Depth on the sewer for the 28th, I don't know off the top of my head. I should have done that coming into here, but I can find out. 28-inch, it's probably gonna be fairly deep, I would assume.
Because if it's
10
pretty
foot or
deep,
greater.
if it's pretty deep and we have to work on it, we might be getting close to wherever their line is.
That is a
It could
concern.
affect our excavation and working on the line.
True. We asked operations about that, and their take on it was if they ever did any you know, obviously there's always a chance to have to open dig it. Being the type of line it is, they would likely do a trenchless or a lining or something similar where they wouldn't have to open dig it. But there's always the chance that you would have to open dig down on that line. So that is a concern. Very true.
Okay. Any other discussion? Okay, when they open cut this thing, is that what you think they're gonna do?
I believe so, yes, sir.
Okay, does that mean they're gonna tear up the road?
They, the easement itself is grassed. When they get to the road, they'll be in the right-of-way for sure. That'll be a Glynn County right-of-way permit they'll be working under. All responsibility to them, or of them, will be handled under the Glynn County right-of-way between them and Glynn County at that point. So we won't have any
I
responsibility.
just don't wanna wind up with the road tore up and people looking for us to fix it.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Do we know if the gas company has ever allowed us to put anything in their their right-of-ways, or their easements?
We have crossed their easements, 99, we've done a recent one within the last
I'm not talking about crossing, I mean
2 years.
putting it parallel within the easement.
Parallel in an easement, I'm not aware of one, of any recent, yeah.
You think this will allow them to maybe start allowing us to do that if we need to?
I certainly will bring it up if we have the chance to, or the need to. I would certainly remind them, and they're, the AGL folks they work with us very well. It's, I'm sure, well, no promises obviously, but I believe they would accommodate us if needed, depending on the situation, for sure.
Well, I think we ought to tell them we want to limit it to the back 5 feet of the right-of-way.
Yeah.
Because any closer than that, it's going to affect that,
Right.
working on the sewer line.
Right, certainly. See if we can specify that in the motion, if that's the way the board wishes to go.
Okay, what is considered the back 5 feet?
If you're looking at the easement plat, it'd be on the, and it's going to be on the east side, so it'd be in the last 5 feet.
Okay, it'd be on the east side.
Eastern
closest.
side, yes, within that last 5 feet.
All right, I'm sure you're aware, I don't know when you say back and front.
Well, it's, the eastern side of the
Okay.
easement.
Okay, then let's
That line
use
is
the
going to be
word
within 5
eastern.
feet, it's going to be within 5 feet of
Can
that.
we use the word eastern and then put backside?
Is that west? Yeah, east, I guess is that way, yeah.
So would you just add that into the overview of proposal agreement?
We would, and that's exactly what we'll do. We'll specify, add that language in there.
Right after infrastructure period, just
Correct. Yes, sir.
within 5 feet of the eastern side of the easement?
Sir.
And that's polyethylene gas line,
That's correct.
and it's not going to have any other metal or any other appurtenances in there with the gas meter, any gas line or anything.
In conversations with them, it was all plastic, and that's all they're indicating on their sketch, or their exhibit they provided us, all plastic. And I think even in the agreement, it states anything else will be shielded properly, if there is any metal.
So when one of these says said gas line shall maintain a minimum of 3 feet separation, is that 3 feet east-west, 3 feet above, 3 feet at an angle? How do you measure that 3 feet? Is that?
X, Y, and Z. So anyway, yeah, depth above or below.
Okay,
plus east,
so if
west.
it's a foot above and,
Right,
2 feet, okay.
right.
And they'll trace it?
Correct. There'll be tracer wire on this line, yes.
Does it need to say that in here?
We can certainly specify that. Yeah, if it's not, yeah,
I didn't see it anywhere.
okay. Let me, make sure that's in there. Yeah, they don't specify that on our sketch, but, we can certainly do that.
And then back to serving the customer at 134, that's this diagram the one with the blue boxes. And the section we're talking about is the red box,
That's correct.
where we'd be letting them come inside of our easement. So as they've drawn it on this diagram, they're not gonna serve their customer out of our easement.
That's what they're not, yeah, they're
Sure
indicating.
does look like it from this one.
When you overlay, I think, to be quite honest, I think AGL did this on Excel or something, or it's a sketch. It's definitely not a construction plan or survey drawing by any means. But they do indicate on their drawing that their service line is gonna be outside of our easement. We can specify that, clarify that.
Because if they did serve it, their customer outside of our easement, and we have them in the back 5 feet, then they're gonna have to come across the entire easement to get to their customer,
Good point.
which means they're not gonna be in the back 5 feet.
To get to
Their 134.
134. Now, that 134 is on the same side, on the eastern side.
Right.
They're on the eastern side.
Oh, on the eastern side, it
Yes.
sure is, on the
About-
eastern side.
For 130,
5 and 33.
33, that's across it.
Yeah, right, 133 and 135 are on the north side of Meadows, up above.
Okay.
Right. Good questions.
This is a little off subject, but Charlie, what is our official name? Yeah, 'cause this one says Brunswick-Glynn County Joint Water Sewer Commission. The other one we approved says Brunswick-Glynn County Water and Sewer. So it's just Brunswick-Glynn County Water and Sewer Commission. Okay.
Got it. Duly noted.
Yes. Got ready to join.
I confuse myself every time I think about that. Sewer Commission, okay.
Charlie's memo, not mine. Although mine says joint on it too, so. I'm just kidding.
I just-
That's where we got that
I'm just doing what Charlie does.
header on everything says joint.
Yeah, our business cards, everything does, so.
Well, that's what I'm confused.
That's a point he's made.
The next time we have legislation, we're gonna fix that.
We didn't change that with legislation? We never changed that? I thought we changed that.
One time they were trying to change, do away with the joint. And then they figured out that changing all the signage.
I remember that.
Where would you put in that agreement the back 5 feet of the right of way?
We would specify that, probably either in the paragraph in, yeah, right there. And, Charlie, is that the best place for it? That first, said gas line shall maintain minimum 3 feet, et cetera, and be located, 5 foot offset off the eastern boundary, or something similar. We can specify it there. No more than 5 feet, yes, within the 5 feet, yeah.
Is it 3 foot separation, is that vertical and horizontal?
Yes, sir, yes, sir.
So we don't need to put vertical and horizontal in there?
We can specify that, be very clear, we certainly can.
Okay. So can I have a motion to approve this, subject to the changes that the commission has recommended? So it doesn't have to come back.
So I make a motion that JWSC approve the encroachment agreement with Atlanta Gas Light Company to allow the installation and maintenance of gas line at 134 Meadows Drive, to include the amendments or the additions that we have so forth discussed.
Second.
Okay. Okay, this is how this will work. I'm gonna put it to a vote. You make the changes. I'll send it out electronically to the commissioners to ensure the changes that they recommend are in fact in there, or you provide a discussion as to why those changes can't be made in the way that
Chairman, we can get, while we're in executive session, I believe Ms. Meredith may be able to make those changes before the end of the meeting.
Okay,
That'd be great.
yeah. Make those changes. All right, call to a vote. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Okay, motion's carried.
Thank you.
You need access to that now?
Yeah, I was just trying to set it up while we're.
Okay.
Okay, we now have canal crossing easements and infrastructure dedication. Tab 7.
All right, Commissioners, I'm back again. My tag team partner, Mr. Dorney. Again, I'm stealing your memo, man. How about that? I'll cut to the chase on the background on this. Canal Crossing Development, Sam's Club, also contains several other developments in there that are now separate and uniquely owned from Canal Crossing Group. Home Goods, Academy Sports, et cetera. That project has been completed for, a year or two, or, for some time. Infrastructure's been in the ground, being utilized, and all that. This demonstrates kind of the end game process on projects, especially large projects like this, and how long it can take to get these things to completion. And that completion is the point I want to drive across, is, as mentioned before, ownership of a pump station site. We're still worrying about that right now, trying to clean that up because that project wasn't driven to completion. And completion is dedication of easements, properties, and also the infrastructure itself. So that's actually part of our review process. It's in our Joint Water and Sewer Commission adopted joint development review process. These dedications that have to happen at the end of the life of a project. A lot of times, once a project is at the end, there's a lot of hurry to, to subdivision, sell lots, or if it's a commercial development, get in business, et cetera, et cetera. These are the loose ends that have gotten lost in the past. What we're really doing is putting steps in place, milestones in place that are tracked to make sure these loose ends are tied up at the end of a project. Hence, this one here is a good example of easements and water and sewer dedications. So that's what this is. There's a stack of easement documents here. Why there's so many, why it's not just one. Ideally, the developer early in the process, or as early in the process as possible, would deed these easements and take these measures before properties change hands to their different businesses they sell to. Unfortunately, that didn't happen soon enough in this case. That's why there's a multitude of, or a handful of owners in separate and unique easement dedications. There's each easement, and let's take the top one. Each one's got 3 exhibits in it that are maps towards the back side. It should be probably the last 3 pages. You'll see pretty much an overall and then a left and a right view. Well, where is it?
Is this a pump station out by the spur?
This is, yes, Commissioner. That's pump station 4101, we designated it. There's an overall, it shows the whole canal crossing development with outlots on the north side of Canal Road, even showing those outlots that are associated with these easement dedications. The hatched-in lines are the easements themselves. These are water and sewer easements. So they're dedicating the easements to us so we can access the water and sewer infrastructure that was installed to serve this development, so we can operate and maintain those properly in the future.
What are the easements we're getting? What are the size of the easements, the width of the easements?
Typically, it's at least for water, at least a 10-foot sewer. We typically look for 20-foot combination of both. If there's water and sewer running parallel to each other, it varies, but usually it's a minimum of 10 feet of width.
So there's 20 foot on every sewer easement in here and all this stuff we got?
Generally it's 20 foot on gravity sewers.
Generally, or is it in all of them?
Well, I'll tell you what, to answer that question accurately, I'd have to go in and look specifically specifically, but
What does our standards call for on easements?
on sewer, typically it is 20 foot,
And water, 10 feet?
10 feet on water, right? 10 foot of separation, if there's water and sewer running parallel.
And all these easements are within those, in that shopping center area?
Right.
So are they in the pavement, or they in the back of the property, or where are they?
Some of them are on the pavement, some of them run through the landscaping. You bring up a good question. So that was a topic of large discussion early on with the landscaping. So we weren't privy to a landscaping plan early on, so we didn't know where the landscaping was gonna go. For our easement agreements, we dictate that no trees and large shrubs and things like that, or hardscape, et cetera, are gonna be put on top of our water lines and sewer lines. After the infrastructure was put in the ground, the developer then did go in and put some landscaping, which included trees, palm trees, some live oaks, small live oaks, which would soon or someday grow into large live oaks.
Over our sewer line?
Correct. Over the lines that they intended to dedicate to us, yes.
Or in our easements.
So, right. So we worked closely with the developer, and he removed and remedied to our satisfaction the landscaping such that we're not too worried anymore about the trees growing into the lines.
Mr. Terpsey, I think in Exhibit B, it
Oh,
kind of
yes.
shows the lay of all
That's right.
the easements across the property.
Do we have irrigation lines serving their development within our easement?
There are
And irrigation nozzles?
there
Where
is,
is
yes, there's irrigation out there, and in some cases, it will be within our easements, yes. The thing about our easements is that if we tear it up, we're not responsible technically for it, because they're not supposed to be within our easement. That was a large
Are the
concern.
manholes still above grade? Manhole covers still above grade?
Above grade,
Or are they below grade where they needed landscaping?
exposed and accessible.
Yeah, are they exposed, so we got them where they're covered over with landscape material?
Yes, sir. I'm not aware of any that have been covered over. That does happen. But at the time that we looked and inspected all this, everything was exposed and accessible.
And all of our valves are exposed,
Correct,
the water valves,
correct,
and pavement and everything, and none of them are paved over.
correct. That was covered on the final inspections, and unless they've done something since then that we're not aware of. But if we were to find that, then somebody would have encroached on our infrastructure within our easement, and we'd address it with the,
Once they're dedicated to us, though, we can go into our easement and take any corrective action.
That's correct. That's another good point. That's the reason why we want to have these easements documented and actually recorded. So
Do
we've got
they have fire meters on any of these facilities?
fire meters?
For the fire protection systems?
Are the fire protection, I don't think they're metered.
I'm sure Sam's is sprinkled, isn't it?
It is. Meters on the, Jay, we meter the,
Typically, no, sir.
Yeah.
We would have a meter on the low flow side for monitoring for illicit taps into the fire suppression system, but they're not fire service meters in general.
So how do we meter the line that goes into the fire
We
lines?
don't, the ordinance specifically calls out metering fire service. We're not allowed to do it for fire use. The small, there's typically like a 1 or a 2 inch. Typically, I try to use a word other than bypass, but it's what it looks like. There's bypass piping on the backflow preventer. So there's no meter on the large body of the backflow preventer and the fire service line, but there is a meter on the small bypass so that we can monitor if somebody has a bathroom plumbed into their fire flow line.
Okay.
Getting pumping use.
Do we charge them for that
Flat rate,
connection?
yes, sir.
A
But
flat-
if it's
flat-
used for fire, the ordinance specifically says we can't charge for the fire flow.
So we charge a monthly bill
Correct.
for connection to it?
Yes, sir.
Is it based on number of sprinkler heads they have, or what?
line size, diameter,
Lines up.
service diameter.
And so that's after the meter, so that's their line.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Or after the, specifically
The
after the
backflow.
backflow preventer.
Yep.
A meter, an 8-inch meter on a fire flow line would be prohibitively expensive, though some utilities do require those to be installed, and also would have to be maintained regularly. And we have a hard enough time maintaining our domestic compound meters without having to be following up on the fire flow.
The meters, the water meters, where are they located? Are they located in front of the stores or at back of the stores?
The majority of them are at the front of the stores, but the mains run in front of the stores, but there are.
Are those cellular or are they radio read?
They're
We gotta drive by.
radio read now.
Are they?
We gotta drive by to read them?
Yes, sir.
Okay. It's kind of a lot to approve. I don't know what we're supposed to accept these? Is that, we have to
Yes.
accept these?
Correct, sir. By our development review procedure or policy, we bring all dedications before the board for acceptance. And the board could, of course, not approve acceptance, and the developer's at risk of then owning and maintaining the infrastructure, et cetera, out there. I would note that we do have a pump station out there that we did on our, as an own joint water sewer project, that we serve multiple customers from.
So by accepting these, we own the infrastructure within those easements too?
That's correct. Yes, sir. And I think, John, to give John some light here, John, once we accept the infrastructure, then you can capitalize the value of that. Is that correct?
Report it as income, and we have to report that as income because it's the fair market value of the asset that's transferred to us. Then you'll see in the financial statement, there's a contributed capital line that goes into that as part of their retained earnings.
And all of the installation met our standards, and did we do any inspection on the lines when they were being put in?
That's correct, yes, sir. These are completely inspected, as all projects are, public or private, and inspected with the intent, or the letter of intent at the early beginning of the project was that the developer intended to dedicate these to us. And this is bringing that to that point. Now, what'll happen after this, if the board approves, if the board does not approve to accept the infrastructure and easements, et cetera, those lines will stay what we call red, which indicate on GIS mapping, indicates privately owned. If the board does approve to accept this, then we will at that point change the color designations to blue for water and green for sewer. And that way our operations folks will know if they are to maintain these lines. These questions come up all the time. So this is another way we prevent from having those limbo lines and questionable, there's a lot of ownership questions that come up daily, especially from operations folks, and we don't like to put them in a position of knowing or not knowing what their responsibility is. So this is going forward. What'll happen is, the board approves this, we'll change the coloration and the mapping. Notice will go out to staff, JWC staff, that, hey, there's been an update made to mapping. We now officially own this infrastructure. Operations will handle it accordingly then. And that'll complete the process. We'll close the project out officially.
And correct me if I'm wrong, this was the intent to dedicate the water and sewer infrastructure within this development was contemplated in part of the development process and has been part of the plans.
That's correct. That's correct. Yes, the intent was from the very beginning of the project to dedicate this to public ownership.
Okay.
So looking at the drawing, and this is the first time I've ever seen any of these, but it's black and white and it's on 8.5 by 11, so it's kind of, I'm so sorry. I thought I had that on vibrate. Thought I actually had this on silent. But we'll be responsible for all the way up to the building, or where does that line, from a sewage perspective, not from a water, because it's probably easier to delineate, but.
Right.
How does that work? I mean,
Good question, and, yeah, I do apologize, 8.5 by 11, black and white, it is tough to see
Yeah, and I'm not
that
criticizing, I'm
hatchet.
just saying, I just don't
Yeah.
understand by looking at it. I just-
So, right, so any of the hatched areas, if you can see that, and I'll be quite honest, I mean, I had the same problem, that's why I sat at the table with different colored highlighters, and so I can make sense of this myself, so I understand where you come from. Yes, anything within the hatched areas is the infrastructure that we will own, the water and sewer, and we'll have access to. To
So how
operate
far
in-
outside of the building are we responsible for it?
Well, I could find the exact distances, but,
Just typically.
it's no closer than I'd say 10 feet or so, 10 or 15 feet, or,
Are the meters right at the edge of our easement?
yes.
All the meters are right at the edge of our meter?
Right. Typically, we'll have those located where we can still legally get in there and dig and maintain.
And are any of these easements in parking areas?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yes, they are. So that's a good point you bring up. So there's paving issues and things like that.
What about loading areas, where loading docks and loading trucks?
There are some, yeah, you'll notice some of the easements run behind the buildings. There are some easements located in those areas. Some of the fire lines you asked about, front of the building or back behind, the ones that run behind are for fire lines. That's where the mechanical rooms are and all that inevitably is for Sam's and the other stores. And so that's where they brought their services in at, so.
So just use an analogy to my house. I'm responsible for everything all the way to the main,
No,
or am I not?
well, everything to the meter on water,
No, I'm talking about sewage.
sewer, everything to the, well, what we hope is a lower cleanout at the right-of-way line. Basically, everything to the right-of-way line.
Okay, well, edge of the right of way. So I mean, if it stops up at my house.
Correct.
And it's out of my house, it's out there under the ground.
Correct.
If it's not, if the meter's, I mean, if the main's free flowing and it's not in the main, it's not at the right of way, y'all are looking at me saying,
That's right.
how does that analogy apply to this?
Same, there's gonna be lower cleanouts outside the building, et cetera, same as your house. It's just gonna be a lot, being a commercial area and whatnot, it's gonna be can be a lot.
And if the
closer.
house, if it runs 1,000 feet across my property though, you're not taking it till it gets right outside the right of way.
That's correct.
Here, it appears to me, we're taking it basically all the way up to their building.
The mains do, in some instances, get close to the building. Yeah, they do. Yeah, we would be responsible for everything within that easement, as close as it gets to the building, yes.
And just to point something out within this, there are two parcels that are owned by two separate companies that are still in the process of being dedicated. They've not, they're not included in this. So out parcel, outlot 1 and 2, which is one where the current Panera Bread is.
Where at?
That's the next one.
Oh, I thought that was a copy, I'm sorry. Oh, okay, I see it now, yeah.
I got a question about the pump station. I don't see an egress and ingress on the pump station off of that paved access road.
There is one.
It's,
I don't see an easement for the force main and the sanitary sewer outside the,
it should be a contiguous easement all the way to the pump station. The pump station is actually being deeded to us, the property itself.
okay, so all of that easement, and that easement would allow ingress and egress to the pump station?
Yes, sir, that's specified in the deed.
Do we normally wait this long to do this?
Great question. I'm glad you brought that up. This has been a, describe it, a challenging and long process going back and forth between, some of it's probably attributed to, once the property was sold, now you've got entities all over the country that the developer's having to work with and follow up with and all that. And it seems to be on the last of everybody's priority to get these things tightened up. Another frustrating part of it. But it has taken a long time. And there's certain things I think that we're looking at, asking the county if they can adjust the development review processes to help us out, expedite these things at the end. Strike while iron's hot and get it done before everybody's forgotten about this type of thing. But it has taken time. I mean, it's been Charlotte.
Yeah, it's been, it first came to me probably back in close to a year ago.
Yeah.
And I negotiated with the Sam's attorney on the tree relocation and so forth. And then we had to get the wording of the easement hammered out. And then we were waiting on surveys and final plans, construction plans and so forth like that, or as-built, is that what it were, or what?
Right, the
Yeah.
record drawings, yes.
So, record drawings. So, yes, sir, it's been a long process, and it's complicated by the developer selling the parcels before the dedication process was done.
Are the easements worded so they can't plant trees on those easements now?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That was, yes, sir. On page 2 of the actual easement, under subsection C, there are some trees that we accepted and some we did not.
Some the hurricane took care of for us.
Some the hurricane took care of. So,
I'll make a motion if we need a motion. Hereby move that JWSC accept the dedication of the easements and conveyance from Canal Crossing Association, Agree Limited Partnership, John P. Suarez as trustee of Sam's Real Estate Business Trust, Exchange Right Net Lease Portfolio, 15 DST, Reese 515 LLC, and Brent Brunswick LLC, more specifically described in the document attached here too.
Have a second?
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 Yes.
Is there further discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please raise your right hand. The motion is carried.
Thank you.
Yeah, Todd, you're still up.
Instead of making us squint.
Mansfield,
All right. It's a pleasure to be back up here with the commission again. This one is memos for Mansfield Street, all right? The project, this is essentially wrapping up the paperwork, I'll say, in a way. I'll read through it real quick. Project cooperative effort between City of Brunswick and Joint Water Sewer Commission. The project contract is between City of Brunswick and J.H. Stone Construction. Joint Water Sewer Commission will reimburse the city per an existing MOU approved by the Board of Commissioners. Scope of the project has been detailed in prior staff memos. All JWC portions of the construction are complete. This is change order number 9 for the final amount of paving replacement and water and sewer infrastructure installed above the original contract quantities. Hence, that's why it's a change order. It's above the original contract quantities. If approved, this amount will be added to the upcoming final pay request, which we should be receiving very soon, to close out this project. It's understood to address the final amount of remaining payable items for JWC portion of this project over original contract quantities. Change order number 9 was presented by J.H. Stone Construction to the City of Brunswick, and that's how this process works. The contractor provides the pay request and all change order requests directly to the city, and the city disperses that to the Joint Water Sewer Commission for staff to vet and approve and bring before the commission for approval. In the amount of $45,829.10. That's the attached exhibit. That's the original. You notice on the original, exhibit A there, you see some red clouding around there. I'll explain that in a second. JWSC staff has reviewed, as we do all change orders. We actually go out in the field and we field verify was the construction completed as is being requested by the contractor. Items that were validated in the field as being additional work required for the water and sewer infrastructure installation are shown in Exhibit B. So Exhibit A was original as proposed by the contractor or requested. Exhibit B is what we actually verified and staff is recommending. So in other words, we couldn't verify everything they were asking for, so we didn't approve or are not recommending approval of everything they asked for. Went from $45,829 to $43,486.10. Exhibit B. Just to give you a breakdown of the numbers there for the simple math. Original contract PO, that's $764,000 number, plus the approved change orders through the evolution of this project, the $251,000. Total approved, $989,000. What we paid out to date, $770,000. And the balance remaining on the PO, that $218,000. Like I stated before, we'll see one final pay request to close out the joint water sewer portion of this project. We expect the only payable item on this pay request to be $6,667 worth of concrete sidewalk replacement. If approved by the board, change order number 9 amount will be added to this final pay request. At present, including known final payable items, staff expects to complete the project within approved funding. And there's the simple math to bring it down. Remaining in the PO, the 218 minus this change order, if approved, 43,000, minus the final payable item we expect, the $600 worth of concrete sidewalk. That'll be the remaining balance that was approved by the commission or the board for this project. So to sum it up, we're coming in under budget on the project, under approved funding for the project.
Okay.
As it's presented.
What was the agreement on paving?
We essentially about split the paving. It was between the city of Brunswick and ourselves and Joint Water. Just about split the paving. There was some additional paving because in Bay Street we took the opportunity to fix some broken valves and water mains that were discovered to be worse than we thought, et cetera, right there in front of the police department there at Bay Street and Mansfield. So that's the reasoning for a little bit of overage on the paving from original contract quantities. And then the sidewalk, there were some sidewalks that had to be removed as well.
So we in the city sat down and made an agreement for us to pay that paving.
Correct. That was in the original agreement. Essentially, yes.
Okay, the original approved purchase orders for $764,000. So we're over that amount.
Correct. In change orders that were added, yes.
What was the change order total, 251? Is that 1 or 2 or 3? How many change orders do we have?
Yeah, eight change orders, yes. I think, yeah, I guess that's 8 total.
Why so many?
Discoveries along the way. Right off the bat, the adjacent gravity main on Reynolds Street was in very poor shape, right outside of Pump Station 4002. So it was, a section of that was replaced. In order to do that, there was a section of force main that had to be replaced. So that was the first 2 right off the bat that we discovered. And then along the way, there was some extra services, home services that needed to be connected that weren't originally accounted for in the plans. Some undiscovered items or things we didn't know about till we got into the dirt. And there's actually one of the items was about $40-something thousand worth of old infrastructure removal. It was above what was originally anticipated. There were a lot of old lines that were discovered once we got in there digging. A lot of old lines.
We had just one engineering firm design the plans for the city and us?
They're correct.
What firm was that?
The engineer of record, Stantec, or the firm of record, Stantec, and they did the plans some time ago, and I believe the city had contracted with Stantec to do the plans. I don't know, I can't remember the year right off the top of my head, but it was some time ago. So it was.
But Stantec didn't really participate in the actual construction.
Good.
It's one of their plans.
Good question. Stantec had a pretty big presence in Brunswick, and it seems right after the start of the project, they reorganized or something, and they pulled their interest from this area. We reached out to them in the beginning to try to keep them engaged in the project, and it just didn't work out. So between the competent staff there with the city engineer's office, and ourselves, we took over the project as best we could to try to get through it. But their participation throughout the project was essentially zero.
And we split their costs with the city, right?
I think, if I recall right, the city covered the cost of the design work. Right.
Todd, I must be misunderstanding the way this was done. I think you got it clear here, but I guess I'm mixed up.
Sure.
So total approved so far is 989,000. You're asking us to approve another 43,486. Am I right so far?
Correct.
And when we get done approving it, we will still be under budget by 168 that we never intend to pay them because we're done with the project. So that 168 will be left essentially.
Correct. You're
And
wondering
we
how
want-
that happened?
No, well, I was wondering why it happened, but more importantly, why do we have to approve another change order if there's still 168,000? If there's still 168,000 left, already approved, budgeted,
Right.
why are we approving a change order? Why not just use 43,000, that 168 to pay them and be done with this? And
Right. Good question, and it's in the spirit of bringing everything forth, especially on this project, the intricacies of it, before the board to understand fully the back and forth on it. So,
Yeah, I think it's probably best that we put it this way too, because of the legalities that we are incurring, so it'll be laid out better. That's the only thing. I agree with you though. If you got the money, why ask for some extra money and then use that, and you already got the money, it's already there. However, but due to the legalities that's happening, it's probably better to lay it out exactly like this, so everybody can see exactly what's going on.
But that 168, it'll never be committed. I mean, the project's 100% done. There's no other, when it says final payout, it doesn't mean final pay request to date. It's final. It's done.
as we stand today, we don't anticipate, or at least everything we anticipate has been stated here. The last bit is that concrete removal, that $6,000 so. We're not aware of any more items, and we're waiting to see that final pay request.
So how do we get change orders that kept going up and up and up if there's still 168 left? How does that happen?
There was one item in particular that the contractor did not utilize completely. It was some service line, and they did not utilize completely, and that left a large quantity of that left in the contract.
Has Brunswick approved their final change order with him too?
I don't know. I don't know, sir. More likely, yes.
So he requested 45 and we're approving 43.
That's correct, yes.
Because we can't locate those two.
That's correct. We field verify everything that's asked for, or everything that's requested, and we weren't able to verify that or obtain documentation.
Okay, do I have a motion?
I'm still a little unclear.
Okay.
I'm still trying to get these numbers in my mind. So when you add change order number 9, do we take the 989, 234.85 and add 43, 486.10 to come up with a new purchase order amount of 1032720?
For the accounting of it in our
For the accounting
spreadsheet, the
of it?
track of it, we will do it that way, right. We'll actually add to the PO, or and the approved change order total, we'll add this 43,000 to that. And then, yes,
So then we get to over $1 million.
in approved funds, correct.
But we've had 100, basically, we will pay out, I'm getting back to what Commissioner Stevens' question was. We have not, when we're finished, we will not have paid out $168,318.54.
Correct.
So we were not billed for that.
Correct.
But it's a separate line item in the contract, if I understand
It is.
the accounting of it. That's so that you can go through and account for it better.
Yes.
That's what Commissioner Harvey was talking about.
I think when you add it up different ways, it still come out the same. It should come out the same. I don't.
Should come up the same
Yeah.
answer.
I don't know.
Yeah, it should come, well, you're right. Well,
Is the city's accounting pretty good?
I don't know, well, you're the big time accountant. You should know. I don't know.
I think we're fine.
I'll make a motion. I move to authorize the executive director to reimburse the city of Brunswick for change order number 9, Exhibit B, in the amount of $43,486.10.
I second.
Is there further discussion? If not, all those in favor, please raise your right hand. Motion passes.
Thank you. Maybe we put these guys to bed.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. Lady. For you again, once again, update of the monthly flows for each plant that's in our great county and city. Take a look at Exhibit 1, Academy Creek wastewater treatment plant. Of course, as it goes, we have flows in MGD, influent concentrations, effluent concentration, and rainfall. Got it?
Flows went up a lot, didn't it?
Yes, sir. We had a rainy month, and we had some other issues going on with pump stations. But we had a pretty good flow that month, 9 MGD.
Good thing the BOD went down, though.
Yeah, did very good on BOD the last couple of months. TSS still falling in its normal range. The influent parameters that was asked for was the ammonias and the phosphorus. As you can see, we just started the last 2 months, but we're using the same collection parameters that we do for the effluent for reporting. So if you look at those two numbers on the NH3, which is the ammonias and the phosphorus, and then you go over to your effluent, you can see that those numbers drop throughout the plant process. Just want to get like a trend on that. I think Commissioner Turnipseed that mentioned before as far as the influent goes. I think we did very well in this month. Academy Creek, no big maintenance issues. Just a few things that we did some vessel cleaning. We cleaned out the contact chamber. We drained each side. Well, the west side we was in getting ready to drain the east side this morning, and we had ran into some drainage problems, so we're gonna be a couple days late on that, probably next week sometime.
Are we gonna have another pilot filter unit there?
Yes, sir. I was gonna ask that question, Andrew.
We are in the process of working through that. Once, no disrespect to Charlie's profession, but once we got the attorneys involved, it became a much more difficult process. So it's been postponed to the next meeting. Charlie sent back his edits in timely fashion, and then their attorneys decided they didn't like those edits, so they want to edit his edits. So we're gonna have to postpone until they all get on the same page.
The manufacturer for that filter, they manufacture them over there in Thomasville, so we might want to take a field trip sometime and look at those, to see them being built.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
I just noticed the pH drops. Do we adjust the pH at all? Do we do anything to adjust the pH?
The effluent pH?
Yes, from the influent. It drops about one unit there.
Yes, sir. As part of the
Chemistry.
It's part of the chemistry involved with it. As you consume BOD,
Yeah.
it consumes alkalinity, which causes your pH to drop because you don't have the buffering capacity in the water.
Yeah, so we have to add some alkalinity to it,
Well,
if we're nitrifying.
Right, this month, as you'll see, the the pH actually of the influent went up a little bit. That's because of the odor control trial we were running. We have enough pH and alkalinity at the head of the plant that we don't get the substantial drops. We get a substantial drop, but we're well above permits. We don't add anything for alkalinity right now at the plant.
What's our influent alkalinity, do we know?
Excuse me?
The influent alkalinity
The influent alkalinity?
is not on here.
No, it's not. I don't have that number with me.
At Dunbar Creek, do we add something to adjust the pH?
No, sir.
Okay. See, the pH is higher there. Definite pH is higher than influent pH. But ammonia removal is in that permit, isn't it? How'd the pH go up?
I will say that we need to verify those numbers, so they should not have went up. You are correct. The pH should not increase unless we add chemicals.
Where you at? Dunbar?
Dunbar and Sons.
Okay. Take a quick look at those numbers.
While you're looking at it, do we have that big of rain differential between here and Dunbar Creek? As it's shown on there?
This is just the rain gauge at the plant. So, could have rained on the island or on the mainland in different locations, it also gets to the plant.
Exactly. It's on the rain gauge at the plant.
That really doesn't give us a good feel for what the rain over the area is that it serves.
We can start pulling, monthly rainfall totals from National Weather Service.
I think having it, what the plan is important, but I think it ought to be more the area that is served by the system as opposed to what's at the plant. And the reason why I say that is the I&I is gonna come from the area that's served, not from the plant. I mean,
Correct.
surely there's gonna be some,
All right.
but I think that's a better metric to use is the area served.
Does the National Weather Service track that closely, though? I mean,
It's
at
not
some point,
to
they're
the
just
tenth
taking
of a decimal.
I mean,
but
they're just taking a snapshot somewhere, though, aren't they?
Right.
So they're taking a snapshot here, that's not gonna say what's here, and I mean, I'm just asking.
I mean, it won't be exact, but it'll be a little broader from the National Weather Service than what we have at that rain gauge.
Gotcha.
Well, I know kind of the rains we get. And
Oh, yeah,
all
it's
over the
here and
place.
all over the place.
Do we track the amount of solids that we truck to the landfill from each plant?
Yes, sir.
That'd be good.
Yeah, we do. We don't have it on this graph here, but we do.
Would that be good for us to know that over a period of time? We could add a
Yeah,
column for
yeah,
that?
we can
If you
add
want us to
that.
add it, we'd be happy to do so.
Yeah, and you put it on the
Just
same
go
chart,
there
and
and get-
you have to have a different chart.
We could add a column, that's not a problem.
Because Academy Creek, we dry it, so it should be, might be about the same as we got from Dunbar Creek, I
Well,
don't know.
we dry, mostly we dry, we also send wet out as well. We sent out 41.34 dry tons last month,
How much?
41 dry tons.
At Academy Creek?
Yeah.
And what about Dunbar Creek?
These charts interesting. On this
The flow at Academy Creek, let's take, for example, being higher this year than last year, trending higher. You think that's due to rainfall? Is that increased I&I from rainfall, or what is the,
It's trending higher.
what's the
The flow.
trend caused by? The blue line's higher than the green line.
Yes, just take a look at the influent BOD, the rainfall is causing a lot of the flow. We started looking at lift station pump run times, it appears the rain is getting, this huge increase we've seen in the last couple of months, appears to be getting in the gravity section that drains directly to Academy Creek. So we're in the process of investigating that now.
We got 22 dry tons at Dunbar.
Okay.
Yeah, I thought we had this problem with Dunbar, not so much Academy Creek.
We have.
Looks like it's
problem with
everywhere.
both locations. There's less available capacity at Dunbar, so that's where we're focusing our attentions first. But the problem is severe in both areas.
Okay.
So it's the same story over at Dunbar then?
Yeah, even worse there.
But I don't understand for July, the rain. In July at Dunbar, the flows are the same, very close to the same. And the rain, certainly on the Academy Creek, was less last year. What about Dunbar? Are we seeing higher rainflow?
Yeah, that's what I was talking about on the rain flow. Here in July, it's saying 6 inches, and over on Academy Creek is 8 inches, is that correct?
Oh, I see what
Wrong,
you're
wrong.
June is 8 inches. What's June at Dunbar? June is a little bit less than 8 inches.
Mr. Copeland, are you speaking about the graphs at Dunbar with the gap in July being different for Academy versus Dunbar, which is about the same?
Yeah, if I look at Dunbar, July, it looks like the flow we see is very similar, the same for Dunbar last year as this year.
That tells us that we've got a new hole in the system we gotta find.
Yeah, there must be another hole.
We are actively searching for it.
Because the rainflow was higher last year.
Yes, sir. We've got a new hole we're trying to find, yes, sir.
I see.
Well, all the manholes we've fixed on St. Simon's,
Let's help out, yes, sir.
it should, but the graph doesn't depict that. I think over time, these will be very interesting.
Well, I'm wondering what September's gonna look like at Dunbar.
Well, as long as we don't get a hurricane, it'll be okay.
Andrew,
That's
did
a
you share,
hurricane that caused that.
did you share that activated sludge thing with Mark?
It's on my desk, I was gonna give it to him after the meeting.
We need to move along. Day is getting by us.
Yep. Well, any other questions on any plans? Of course, you'd like to say Dunbar's next with your graphs, we spoke on some of that. Southport follows it. But we will add, the dry tons to the graph. And what else you wanted to add? Oh, yeah, I got it up here. Yeah, I got it on there, but I took it off because I didn't have a, yeah, I didn't have the money on it. We actually about 7,000 gallons.
Okay, any other questions? Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Okay, we're gonna,
All right, Commissioners, I was primed to give this last meeting, and I sent this out in advance, so it was requested that I maybe not go into as much detail as part of this presentation, so we're just gonna hit the high notes. So we're gonna skip a few slides so we don't get too down in the weeds. So just a brief overview, how's it supposed to work, what does it look like so far, what we're gonna do about it. Brief overview, we're doing magnesium hydroxide in a lime slurry. It's approximately 90% lime, 10% magnesium. The chemical manufacturers don't like giving you their exact blends because they're proprietary. So doing some basic chemistry on the backside, you can get to pretty close to that. We're supposed to be running this for 60 days. We are on roughly day 45. We're feeding at 3 lift stations upstream of Academy Creek, 4001 on the south side, 4028 off of Altama, and 4036 on the northwest side. And again, this data is up to date through the end of July, because this is the exact same presentation I was going to give last time. I won't go into this, but basically, you look at the chart, there's that S-shaped curve. If you get left or right of on the pH chart, the odor either increases or decreases. We have 2 odor-loggers in place at Academy Creek at the raw sewage wet well. One's shallow, which is at the top of the wet well, which kind of reads the ambient, and the deep, which is down actually near the pumps, which shows us more of what our safety situation is. We're also taking influent pH samples every day anyway, so it was good to compare those about what I spoke about earlier. So this is a chart that shows our readings, our weekly readings for the last 3 months. And you see that one dip down there near the 4th of July. That is right after the 4th of July. That is the first week that we ran the new samples. This is the shallow reading, so the ambience. So you can see as we initially started the trial, we had a great decrease, and then you see it jump back up again. You'll see the same thing on the deep one, which is the safety one. You see a massive decrease right after the 4th of July, and then it starts going back up a little bit. pH shows the exact same thing. If you look back at the S curve on the front end, you'll see if pH gets above 8, you're really knocking out your H2S. And what you'll see on this chart is on the week after the 4th of July, the pH coming in the head of the plant was above 8, and that was when we were getting the massive reduction. So from all 3 of the graphs, there's an initial success that seems to have went away. So does this make sense to us, and why would it start working and then stop working? Basically, here's what the difference is that we just talked about. The influent flow has been jumping all over the place because of our apparent new issue that we're trying to find. If you see the flow decreased and went back sort of to normal the week of the 4th of July, then it started raining every day again. And your dosing is not being, our dose is not flow paced right now. So we're dosing the same amount regardless, and if we're treating 30 to 40% more water going through there, you're not getting the same dosage as what's necessary. So that explains why we saw the immediate decrease, then it went back up. So for this month of the trial, we're working with the trial provider to better flow pace that dosing, so that there may be a slight increase in the amount necessary at times in the rainy months, but it would also inherently be a decrease in the dry months instead of just being consistent dosing. So we're going to review the data again after we have improved the flow pacing and see what we've got. We would expect it to be closer to that initial week where we dosed and the flow was back to normal, because we basically gave them a daily average flow estimation of 7 and said dose it assuming there's 7 million gallons coming in the plant, and at these 3 trunks what we would get there, those have changed. So the first week was pretty close to that, then they've changed, and so when we get the dosing correct for the flows, it should go back to what we expected.
Are we paying a charge for this
We are paying for the chemicals, yes sir.
and the equipment?
The equipment is rented as part of the chemical charge,
How much have we been paying a month?
right at $20,000.
How much the chemicals cost?
It's $1.20 a pound or something, but that's dry pounds. That's not the wet tons. So it's $8,000 to $10,000 a load.
Are we dosing it in the right location, you think?
We are dosing it at the upstream stations that carry the most flow. So we expect that to be the ones that would have the biggest impact on the odor.
Are we getting good mixing?
We are, yes, sir. There's a lot of turnover at all 3 of these stations, so it should be mixing very well. And I know I went through that very quickly, but if anybody's got any questions, I'll be happy to espouse further.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Okay, we have 2 large topics to cover, and I want to try to move on out of here, so if we could have the talk on the billing format at the next meeting and slide into the friendlies and then the financials. That's okay, commissioners?
That's fine, sir.
Okay, so who's going to tell us about friendlies? Oh, you, golly.
Friendly. And I'll be brief.
That's my line.
Thank you, Jay, for yielding to me. I appreciate that. All right, Commissioners, Friendly Express number 71, Water and Sewer, cooperative agreement, we'll call it. We originally had this on for an approval item. Didn't get all the documentation in hand or the agreement finalized before this commission meeting, so it's deferred to the next for decision. But wanted to give you a brief preview on it to give you some background. First exhibit is a map that shows the area of 341 and 303 intersection in the area of Pumpkin Patch. Pumpkin Patch is in the northwestern corner of the intersection shown. The project site, Friendly Express number 71, a gas station that's project that's underway. is in that red hatched area, Friendly Express. As part of Friendly Express's review by Glynn County Fire Department, they required fire protection to be a hydrant to be on site. Water and sewer infrastructure is shown also on this exhibit. Our infrastructure, water and sewer, only extends to where it's designated up in the bottom right-hand corner. And that's the closest extent it gets to it. As part of their project, they're going to have to extend water and sewer to the site. For Glynn County water and sewer ordinances, current ordinances, to have a hydrant requires an 8-inch main. So as part of their project, they're going to have to extend an 8-inch main for the point of connection to our system at a minimum. And then also to get their wastewater to us, they'd have to extend a 2-inch force main from a small pump station on site that they will privately own and maintain. 2-inch force main in the right-of-way down to tie into our system to discharge the wastewater. As with all projects, we always look for opportunities to benefit our customers, potential customers, or our existing system. In this case, staff saw an opportunity to reach a segment of the community that we do not currently serve. On the next page, you'll see an overall exhibit. It's a zoomed out version of that shows the Friendly Express site down here at the intersection of 303 and 341. And if you'll notice, down on the lower right-hand corner shows the farthest extent of our current infrastructure. And up in the upper left-hand corner, you'll see the farthest south extension or limits of our existing infrastructure from the North Mainland area, up around Taco Bell, Popeyes, that area on the north side of Yellow Bluff Creek. So there's a large area here that's unserved, currently unserved by Joint Water and Sewer Commission. They're either on private community or private individual wells for water and private individual on-site treatment or septic tank, drain field infrastructure. At the last meeting, we had a person come in and speak to us at the public comment period, requesting us to look at their neighborhood for possible extension for sewer project. That is, that one in particular, Ellis Point over here to the west, right against the water there headed towards Blythe Island. There's several mobile home parks. There's a lot of commercial infrastructure up and down 341 up in that area as well. So staff's identified there's a potential opportunity there if we extended water and sewer up to that location. Friendly Express, we got in conversations with them. They're very receptive to us working together with them. If they're going to extend that infrastructure to their project site, why not take and extend it a little bit further, get underneath 303 and be teed up, ready to go and possibly serve these other areas in the future. At least we would overcome a large challenge we had so far, which is getting north of 303. It's DOT right-of-way 303 and 341. It's difficult for permitting. It's very congested in that area. This is an opportunity for us to extend our infrastructure to that, through that, to the other side of 303 and finally be up there. The cooperative agreement that we're going to bring before the board for consideration is basically to upsize from their minimum needs, an 8-inch main and a 2-inch force main, up to a 12-inch main and a 4-inch force main, and crossing under 303. So it's that, the upsizing cost, and also the additional cost to extend beyond where they need to from their project site to the north side of 303. Along with that, they have offered to provide us with an easement across, a dedicated easement across their property. Another win for us. Easements are difficult to obtain. This would be a good time to get this. Infrastructure going in, the project's already going in, they're already going to have their contractor out there. We'd essentially split the mobilization cost with them. This is going to be directionally drilled for the largest part. Mobilizing that type of equipment on site is fairly expensive. If we were to do this at some point in the future, obtaining an easement at some point in the future after this business is in action and going would be difficult for one thing, get permission. And doing it now while the construction is underway, it's a good time to do it if we're ever going to do it. So those are kind of the pros of it. The cost, the additional cost, we asked them for some cost comparisons. They came back to us with pricing from their contractors. Summary, essentially, the amount they would ask from us, the cooperative amount is about $160,000 to upsize the pipes, and then also the additional footage in the crossing to get under 303. And I'll throw this in here too, their engineer, they have included the engineering on this, so that's not an insignificant cost. As far as permitting with DOT, construction plan development, et cetera, project management, I would also voice that there's some cost that we would save in that too, by them taking that upon themselves. So it's a chance for a cooperative.
So currently there, I'm sorry, I thought.
Oh, yes. Go ahead.
Currently, there was a gas station there and a little restaurant, I believe, on that corner as well. What served it? Were they on?
Best we can tell, they were on septic, and best we can tell, there was a mysterious water service that reached their site that nobody, still to this day, hadn't been able to identify where it came from.
Mysterious what?
Water service. It could have come from a private well. They don't know where it came from. We don't know where it came from, but it's long since demolished.
Are they gonna get the permit over the highway up at the top where we're extending the 4-inch force main?
They will do the engineering documents and the application and all that. We will actually file the GUPS permit for that. As the intended owner of the utility, DOT requires Joint Water to be the actual applicant, so we would apply for it.
And both the force main and the water line are gonna be directional bored the whole way?
For the majority of the way. Across their site, it would probably be open cut, likely be open cut, to save a little cost there. But underneath, definitely under the right-of-way, along the church frontage property, and I'll mention that too. The majority of it will be directionally drilled. Correct.
This is based on their contractor prices.
Correct.
Should we get another price from another contractor too?
We can certainly do that, and we're actually doing that, hope to have a comparison in hand before we bring it about for consideration. And the easement, there's also another easement that the developer has obtained the right of entry at this point with a commitment from the church to dedicate us an easement once the construction is complete. We've got in writing from the church. That'll allow us to keep our main out of the DOT right of way, which is always a plus. That's along the frontage of their athletic field there.
Is there a gas line along that road?
There is. There's a lot of utilities, actually in the DOT right away. There's a large telecom bank that runs through there. We want to stay well away from that. Obviously we'll have to cross it at one point, or they will.
Well, the depths of the lines are agreed to between us?
The depths of the lines, good question. So we'll, of course, want to keep water lines accessible as much as possible. Along the church frontage, that'll be to the standard 36 inches of cover. Underneath the DOT right-of-way, they're going to have to dive down under that bank, so it'll, have some depth to it at that point. I think the bank is about 2 to 3 feet underneath the road deck. 18 inches of separation minimum underneath that bank, so it'll be some depth there. Force main, it's not quite as critical accessibility. But we'll still maintain everywhere we can a maximum of 3 to 4 feet of cover.
How soon would this work start?
Well, the county issued them a permit to do the on-site. That's why you've seen some construction going on right there. They're blocking up the building and everything now. Well, it's essentially about blocked up. They're doing the on-site drainage and things like that. They have not gotten there. Now, this work is considered off-site construction. It's done under a separate construction plan permit with Glynn County. So that construction permit, or the plans actually have to go to EPD as well for approval, because this will be an extension to the system. All extensions to the system have to go to EPD for approval. For this will be a fairly simple process. Probably 2 months, I would say.
The only easement is across Christian Renewal's frontage there? The only easement required?
Correct. Well, the easement on that side across Christian Renewal's property, and then once we get on site to the Friendly Express property, they're going to dedicate us an easement across their property to get to the other side of 303.
So in reference to the 2019 budget that we approved, where would these funds come from in that budget?
This is not part of the budget. This is a capital improvement.
So this
So
is,
this is gonna come out of our, because it's an extension of capacity or increase in capacity, it'll be out of the capital improvement fund that's generated by collecting tap fees. The workshop we're supposed to have next Thursday, we're gonna go over that budget, and it'll be included as a item in that budget for approval by the commission.
It's sitting in the bullpen right now, we call it.
In the bull.
All the proposed projects and conceptual projects, we put them in that bullpen on the capital project report, and you'll see it down there. When it's approved, or if it's approved by the board, it'll then move up and be numbered and actually become a capital project, be in the list.
So you said they needed a 2-inch, we're gonna upsize it to a 4-inch. How much, I mean, in layman terms, how much extra capacity does a 4-inch provide? Not necessarily how much extra, but how much does it provide? So, I mean, I look at this as a huge chunk of real estate here we're trying to get access to. Is 4-inch enough to do everything we wanna do in the future, or?
We expect so, especially for, the communities we've identified there. 4-inch will carry a lot of water, and that's a very vague answer I'm giving you. And of course, you can always upsize it by going back and pipe bursting. You can expand it if ever need be. But we believe it's sufficient to serve these areas.
so does that come out of the restricted for capital projects line? It would come out of the 25,292,000.
That's not the right number.
That's where we'd actually get the, it would come out of that line.
The actual cash, if you turn to the schedule of cash balances, there's capital improvement free reserves of $5.256 million. That's the actual cash fund that would provide the money for it.
I see.
We don't have to do anything, there's no action, right?
No action, just wanted to bring it to the board's attention, give a little background, because we plan to, if we can get that agreement approved on both sides, both parties, bring it back for consideration at the next commission meeting.
Any guidance before he brings it back?
Will we have the other prices by then?
Yes, sir. Definitely.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll go to the balance sheet now.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. In your packages, you have the financial statement packet for July 30th, 2018, the first month of the fiscal year. The first one being the balance sheet. It shows that we have a column for the June 30th, 18 numbers. Those numbers are still being adjusted for the audit, and will probably change once the audit is completed. But they definitely will change. Not all of the adjusting entries have been made as yet, which may result in some of the July 31st numbers changing too, with beginning balances changing. I don't really have any comments on the balance sheet itself, because it still is being worked on for the closing out of the year end. The second page is the supplemental schedule of cash balances as of the end of July. And those all tie back to the cash balances indicated on the balance sheet. You see we have under the capital or the repair and replacement reserve, you'll see there's $7.6 million of cash here. When we were going through the CIP schedules and seeing how much cash we had available to commit, that was just yesterday, I believe. We actually have just over $300,000 available to commit to new projects. The rest of it is all budgeted for projects that are under construction right now. The excuse me, the next page is the combined statement of revenues for the first month of the year.
Please explain again, which you have done before, the line capital improvement fee reserves.
That's the cash balance for that you're talking about? Yes, those are the capital fees that are charged when new users come into the system, and that's set aside into another separate reserve for expansion purposes.
Okay, but you just said we had 300,000.
Pardon me?
What's the expansion reserve up above?
Oh, that $500,000 one? We started, was 2 years ago, we budgeted for a expansion reserve of $1 million a year.
Okay.
For expanding the system, to put away some money for that expansion out of our own monies. Because of budget constrictions, we weren't able to fund that fully. Part of that reserve was used for a large vehicle and equipment replacement 2 years ago,
Okay, I understand.
and there has been no further funding.
Why don't you come to the commission and ask to fold that into the repair and replacement reserve?
That could easily be done.
What?
That I can easily drop a resolution for the next meeting to do that.
Okay. That'll help end some of the confusion of it.
Did I hear you right about the repair and replacement reserve? We show $7.6 million, but only $300,000 is available? The rest of it's already committed or under?
The rest of it is dog-eared for projects under construction right now.
Under construction. We got $7.3 million worth of construction projects under construction right now.
Under construction includes things that are in engineering phase and stuff like
It's
that.
it's not necessarily hard construction, but there are projects that are in progress, as Mr. Burrow said, either in engineering or.
Okay, you need to add another worksheet in here which just lays out the projects that funds are committed to. Not like what we do whenever we go through the capital programs we have going on, when replacement and reserve, when Todd goes through it, but just what you have that is being reserved or allocated for projects. And you need to do the same thing for the capital improvement fee review.
Yes, sir, that's usually a schedule we prepare just a few days before the end of the month to prepare our cash transfers to fully fund the reserves for that. So we'll be doing that in the next week or so. I'll send out that working copy to you once it's completed.
Okay, well, when we go over the capital, when we go over the finances, so that the commissioners can all understand, you need to have that sheet in there for whatever month that was, so that we can see what is already on.
That actually was a report that I included in this up until the last couple of months, and we've been working on a project report that was kind of a more all-encompassing document that gave not only the monies that were available and committed, but gave progress so you could see all of the projects.
Well, I understand, and that's what Todd really should cover, or you should cover, when he goes through all his capital projects and all the stuff that he's working on. But just for the financial statements that are gonna be the record document, then you ought to have something like that in here, which accounts for where that money's gonna go.
We can add that back in. It was my directive to get them to consolidate the two reports.
Uh-huh.
And I thought we were gonna have it in your all's hands in the newer form sooner than now, but we're still working through some, working out details that are not pretty on the paper the way it looks.
Okay.
And actually, right after the meeting, I can email all of you that statement if you
Well, that
want.
would be good. I appreciate that. Okay.
So the combined revenue statement, you see at the top under the revenues, the sewer revenues and water revenues and the administrative charges all have, at this point, fairly large variances for 1 month. That's actually due to, the budget was prepared under the old rate structure, or the existing rate structure that's been in place for a number of years. So in the new rate structure, customers are billed for 1,000 gallons of water and 1,000 gallons of sewer, and that's billed out as a base fee, which, because of the default codings in the billing system, throws 1,000 gallons of usage into the administrative revenue amounts. So we're going to have to make a budget amendment at some point to move those monies around so that the accounting records actually reflect where the money is being generated and coded to. We have a few other budget adjustments that we'll have for the shift in inventory personnel and a couple of other things that are in process.
How many months of, under the new rate structure do we have in this now?
1 month.
So,
July.
are we making 3% more money with that new rate structure? Are we bringing in 3% more revenue total?
I'd have to do the math on that to confirm that, Commissioner.
Mr. Donaghy, on the very first line of that says sewer revenues, the 2019 budget is $14,790,000.
Mm-hmm.
The pro rata budget is $1.3 million.
Yes.
I assume that's $14,790 divided by 12.
Yeah.
And then the actual is $1,216,000.
Yes, sir.
So we're out of budget by $107,000.
Yes. And there's,
But I'm sorry, give me two more seconds. I just want to make sure I'm asking the question properly. So we're out of budget by $107,000. But if you annualize that, we're only out of budget by $190,000. If you look at the annualized amount. So on an annual basis, we're only out by $190,000. But on a monthly basis, we're out by $107,000. But if you annualize 107 times 12, obviously that's way different. So I'm thinking there's unless I'm misreading this, there's well, 14,790,000 divided by 12 can't be 1.3 million.
Yeah, that should be 1.23.
okay. I'll have to go back and check those
The
numbers.
14,790,991 divided by 12. Yeah, you're right. It's 1.2 million instead of 1.3 million. So we're off by 90,000 on that one, which would mean that actually we're only off $16,000 on the monthly basis, which would put the annualization, times 12. That's probably in the 190 range. So are these numbers typed in, or is this not a calculation in the spreadsheet? Is this not a calculation in a spreadsheet? I mean, is it typed in, or is it a calculation?
These numbers come directly out of the accounting system and are exported to an Excel spreadsheet. But in order to get the over-under budget numbers and the annualized amount, I have to take all of those columns and manually manipulate them, each column, in order to get the report in the format that you've asked it to be. So every time I do that, there is a chance for errors in formulas or mistyping a number or something.
Well, it seems like you could just transpose the two columns and have, instead of having to type in pro rata budget, just have it divided budget by 12, or divide it by 2 and multiply it.
It is a formula copied down, but there's always some chance for error in changing those as I'm going through those.
But it's off 10%.
Does the enterprise software do basically seasonal weighting on things that are seasonal, like revenues from water and sewer use?
No, sir. It only
So it's straight line.
It only reports what you can go in and separately budget by month for those. By default, it divides it by 12.
So it's a linear. model as opposed to,
But you can go in and manually input seasonality into some of the accounts.
And it looks like our 2019 budget is the actual exact amount as the 2018 actual.
Yeah, I didn't understand
Did we
that.
budget exactly what we spent in the prior year? I thought it was a kind of a, was a fact.
No.
See, it's a 2019 budget, and if you look at those numbers, they're all the exact same as the 2018 actual. So that might be the errors. It might be that the column where I'm dividing by the wrong thing because the wrong column's on here.
Well, the number should be
Then-
the budget that we all agreed on for 2019. And it shouldn't be the same numbers.
I tried to make sure, I tried to double check that the numbers were correct in these, but apparently,
Okay, Mr. Junkin,
to recheck some more of them.
I wouldn't mind, well, yeah. I was just gonna say, I wouldn't mind participating in a small, maybe, work session with just a few of us to look at some formats for some of the stuff. 'cause,
okay,
I
well,
mean,
that's a good idea.
I wouldn't.
Why don't you set up a special meeting and, unless you have some burning desire, be Mr. Copeland, or Commissioner Copeland, and Stevens and me.
That would
I
really.
think we're getting kind of frustrated with the financial information that
Well,
we
it would be
continue to
very
find
helpful.
errors.
It would be
Can't
very
get them
helpful to me
explained.
to have some, we asked for, the commission asked for an annualized column, which I can put in manually, but we've got several different reports in different formats. It would be very helpful to me and my staff to have one format that the commission agrees upon and be able to see what the system can actually produce to minimize the manual work that goes into adding a column or percentages or differences in these, which unfortunately can lead to mistakes when something is manually done.
Yeah, I think we owe it to you to give you a concise, this is what we're looking for, this is what we wanna track, and then,
That
then we
would be
can-
helpful, yes.
Okay.
we'll set that up.
We need to go to an executive session. Okay,
Can I ask him a couple questions?
okay.
Sure.
Well,
So looking at the reserves, for example, I'm wondering about, what you just said, that, about the capital reserves and the commitment. I'm wondering, where are the reserves held? Where do we have those monies?
They're held in, at BB&T Bank right now.
They're in the bank. And, are we earning some sort of interest on those?
On those particular reserves, some, yes, but
So
not
like
much.
it's a 0.4% per year right now, if it's in some sort of money fund?
On those, because those funds need to be fairly liquid. There probably is some base amount that could be put into a longer-term investment, such as the funds are operating reserve and some of the deposit reserve are in longer-term investments because we don't need those monies right away.
So we do have some that aren't in BB&T?
They're with BB&T, but they're in the investment wing of BB&T.
Okay.
Rather than the checking and savings and money market accounts that we typically have them in.
The interest that is earned on those funds, where is it accounted for in our reports?
It goes into the general operating incomes as part of the other income that's listed.
Oh, that's part of the other income.
Yes.
Okay. So other income includes interest income from reserves.
What little there is, yes. It's not a huge amount.
I was looking back at the following reports, back on page 1 of 17. You actually have an interest income line,
Yes, sir.
but I don't think, is that the reserves?
That's-
Interest from the reserves, or is that interest from,
That's interest from all of our sources, the cash funds that are with BB&T, the investment funds, and the interest funds that are held with the bond trustee, or the reserve funds that are held with the bond trustee.
So we're expecting to earn $20,000 in interest over the next 12 months?
Actually, I'm expecting to earn more because as we're putting monies into longer-term investments, earning higher rates, being the operating and deposit monies that we're holding.
Okay. I was just looking at interest options. Gosh, what's available at the bank isn't much.
Yes, and the treasury management is one of the things that's been kind of on the back burner for too long.
Yeah, Treasury, we could be working potentially with Treasury Direct and not even paying fees to BB&T to manage those funds. We could just go straight into treasuries. Short-term, 13-week treasuries are paying a little bit over 2% right now. And 2% of, $28 million
A little bit of money.
is over $400,000 that could be returned into our operating needs that I guess BB&T's putting that in their pocket right now because they're using the funds. If the funds are there, the money's earned. So there's a $500,000 that is laying on the table if we do some treasury management.
Maybe not quite that much because we can't put every penny into those kind of things because we do need.
Might be half of it.
Yeah, half may not be.
Could be $250,000.
Half may not be. I don't want to argue the numbers now, but it could be a significant amount of money.
Yeah. So that was a comment that I had when I was looking at this, and I saw that 20,000 was our interest, and I was thinking it should be 20,000 a month, not 20,000 a year. So I think we need to look at that. That's quite a bit of money. And it's pretty easy to do. Well, I was looking at the overtime. I'm wondering what happened on the overtime report. In 2018, let's see, where is it? Wastewater treatment?
I think the hurricane happened probably.
Was that where the 192,000 came from?
No, sir.
What I'm wondering is why did it drop to 25 for our budget this year?
Because the vast majority of our overtime in wastewater treatment was due to permanent scheduled overtime amongst our operators. We have changed the shift for those operators where they don't get scheduled overtime. Most operators were getting somewhere in the neighborhood of 15 hours of overtime every paycheck from the way they were being scheduled.
So that's going away.
That has gone away.
I see. And that's not the case with systems pumping and maintenance. Theirs are still up there.
Theirs is entirely reactionary.
Although they made a pretty significant improvement based on some changes they made to the SCADA system, which reduced their call-outs dramatically.
I remember us talking about that. You were reporting on that.
So
Okay. So I see. Okay, so you've cleaned up scheduling of their hours, and that's going to save a significant amount of money.
The estimates were in the neighborhood of a couple $100,000 annually.
Yep. Okay, that's what I had. I'm ready to go to.
Okay. Can I have a motion to go into executive session?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, please raise your right hand.
For property and litigation.
What?
For property and litigation.
For personnel and litigation.
Personnel litigation. Give me a second, personnel litigation. come out of executive session.
So moved.
Second, all those in favor, please raise your right hand. Commission meeting for August 16th is adjourned.